Okay. I think we are live now. Kasim, if you can just do me a favor and just confirm that we are live, that would be appreciated. And I'll get my screen up here and then we will kick off. Awesome. So we got some Q&As already rolling in. We can hear you. Excellent. Awesome. So we are live now. Thank you everybody for taking time out of your day to join us for this informative and timely session on personal service business and personal service corporation risk. My name is Andrew Wall. I'm the managing partner at CPA4IT. We specialize in independent contractors, and I'm joined by my peers today, Eric Chevrette, who's the president and founder of IT360, and Amanda Klassen, who's the practice leader for independent contractors at LMS ProLink. And sort of we're a team of advisors who are collaborating and working to solve the problems facing the independent contracting market. Eric solves on some of the wealth management and financial services side. I solve on the accounting and bookkeeping side. And Amanda is a go-to resource when it comes to liability and other forms of insurance. So without further ado, maybe Eric, do you mind taking a second just to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, so Eric Chevrette, I'm the president of IT360. IT360 has been around for 15 years, and we strictly work with independent contractors across Canada. Now the firm has 15 employees, and we are working from day one with independent contractors, helping them with their insurance needs on personal and corporate side, pension plan, and investment portfolio.
Excellent. And Amanda, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you. So my name's Amanda Klassen, and I'm the practice lead for independent contractors at ProLink. ProLink is a full-service brokerage located in Toronto. We do offer one of our largest affinity programs, and that is for independent contractors, both with staff agencies and those contracting directly. So anything liability and general insurance-wise that you need to talk about for being an independent contractor, I'm definitely happy to assist you with that.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you both for joining me, because I think you both offer a unique perspective on this issue around independent contractor status that we're going to be talking about today. So as I said, my name is Andrew Wall. I'm the managing partner of CPA4IT. Our mission is helping clients organize their finances, create wealth, and transform wealth into a legacy. And we do that largely by helping clients to incorporate, leverage the benefits of the incorporation, work with professionals like Eric and Amanda to make sure that you're protecting your downside with insurance and you're maximizing your upside with things like individual pension plans and insurance tools from a wealth management perspective. So it's, again, a pleasure to be here, but really what we're here to talk about today is personal service business. And this is not new to us. CPA4IT was founded in 1984, so we've been doing this for several decades. It's a multi-generational firm. It was founded by my father, George Wall. And we've dealt with this personal service business issue several times throughout our career. And what seems to happen is we go through these ebbs and flows where CRA wants to come out and assess independent contractors that they believe are low-hanging fruit in this big tax opportunity. And they launch a project, and then we, with the help of people like Eric and Amanda and the National Association of Computer Consulting Businesses, go out, lobby the government, tell them how wrong they were, fight for your rights as independent contractors, win our cases, and then they go away for a few years. And then someone new and young comes in and sees the opportunity again and starts up another project. Unfortunately, we are in that phase where someone young and unlearned has decided that they want to target the personal service businesses again. And we're in the middle of a pilot project that is going on by CRA to assess personal service businesses. And we're going to tell you more about what that project is. And we're also going to give you some information on how you can actually go about protecting yourself from this risk, and how we, as the various forms of support that you have here today can assist you in protecting against this risk. So let's start with a definition of what personal service business risk is. And there's a whole lengthy description on the Income Tax Act that I used to include up here, and then I realized, well, that doesn't really speak to you as independent contractors and the language that you use. But what it is basically the CRA coming in and basically saying that we don't believe that you are truly an independent contractor. We think that you are more like an incorporated employee. And as such, we're going to deny the favorable small business tax rate of only 12.2%, charge you a higher tax rate on anything that you left in your corporation. Plus, we're going to deny a whole bunch of your expenses. And we're going to go back and we're going to go after multiple years of your tax filings and reassess you with additional taxes and additional penalties. And this can be really quite financially impactful. And the analogy I use for a personal service business assessment is sort of like a shark attack. And the reason I say that is because when it happens, it is absolutely devastating and life-altering. But the reality is it doesn't happen to all that many people, and it shouldn't stop you from enjoying the beautiful ocean. What it does mean is that you want to take the right steps to protect yourself and understand, am I swimming off the coast of, Bahamas where the sharks are safe and friendly, or am I swimming off the coast of South Africa with great whites where I could die? And that's what we're going to do today, is help educate you on what's going on, what are the risks that are out there, things that you can do to mitigate these risks and manage the potential impact if it does rear its ugly head in your direction. So this pilot project that is going on right now is a multi-phased approach. We're currently at the tail end of the second phase of the project. It is all documented on CRA's website if you want to look it up and get all the details. But in the first phase, they were identifying companies which they claim were hiring personal service businesses. And that was sort of from June to December of 2022. And in that, they are claiming that approximately 10% of companies were hiring potential personal service businesses. And they identified about 2,100 corporations that they deem as potentially hiring personal service businesses. So in this phase 2, CRA is continuing that identification process. And now they're targeting the actual independent contractors, which they claim are operating as personal service businesses. This timeline is sort of running from October of 2023 till they said fall of 2024. What we have seen is we have seen letters that have been going out as a result of this project, which we're going to share with you today. The first letter that comes out is a voluntary PSB disclosure letter. So in this letter that they're sending out, they're effectively asking you to raise your hand and say, look, over here, I'm a personal service business, which unfortunately people do all the time. They get a letter from CRA, they're afraid. And in fact, there's many other accountants and bookkeepers who counsel people that they are personal service businesses and that they should file their taxes as a personal service business. That is not our perspective. As I said, we've been doing this for well over 3 decades, coming up on 4 now. And we've been very successful. In fact, we have never lost a personal service business case ourselves. And we have worked with people like Eric and Amanda and the NACCB to fight these projects in the past. And last time we had a special project, Eric, I think there was over 200 cases that the NACCB fought and defended, and they won every single one of those cases.
Yes.
Now, unfortunately, it was a consent to judgment, which means it didn't become tax law that could be used going forward. And really the only people who knew about the outcome of those 222 cases was all the members of the National Association of Computer Consulting Businesses and ourselves who worked on that special project. So the number one message here is, if you get that letter, do not reply to that letter without consulting with a personal service business expert, because a personal service business expert who knows and understands how to respond to that letter can help you mitigate any risk that you might have. So first of all, that first letter, you're certainly not going to say that you are a personal service business, but this is what the letter looks like. So it's a couple pages here, so bear with me. But as you see here, it says, you may meet all of the following conditions of a personal service business for the period under review. And they're going through a whole bunch of criteria of how they define a personal service business, which I won't bore you with reading. But on the bottom of the second page, they say, if you think that you are operating as a PSB and you would like to correct the amount you reported, you can request a reassessment. Yes, you're permitted to have the government reassess you and charge you interest and penalties. You know, they're, like I said, this is a bit of a fishing exercise in this process. And hopefully if you got this letter, you did not fall for that lure. Unfortunately, this was not the end of the project. There was a second follow-up letter in which they were deeming contractors as PSB. So now they've gone a step beyond the first thing, saying, hey, raise your hand if you think you are. You know, you might be one. Raise your hand if you are one. So this second letter was far more direct. And again, this is the second letter here. It says, subject to the review of incorporation. We are following up on the attempts to reach your authorized representative. Our records show that you may be operating as a personal service business. Again, they're using the may, and then they go through some questions about defining what a PSB is. But in that, what they want you to do is to respond to that letter, and you have to respond to that letter. And once you respond to that letter, you're going to be put in touch with a representative from the CRA who's going to manage your case, and they are going to ask you a bunch of questions. They are going to do everything that they can to get you to answer those questions over the phone without representation. And that is, in my opinion, entrapment, but that's a whole nother story. And if you don't know the language and the rules around independent contractor, it's really easy to answer those questions in a way that can deem you to be an employee or a personal service business rather than an independent contractor. Now, the good news is the way we handled it is for the individual case that we had, we called up the auditor. We said, give me the list of questions and then we're going to follow up and respond to you. She wanted us to respond verbally. We did not. We drafted a formal letter and a formal response and sent that over to her to let her know we are taking this very seriously. She's got representation. We know and understand these issues. And with that response, the entire process was dismissed for that individual. So I know what the questions are. They are, like I said, almost designed to trip you up. But if you are knowledgeable around the subject and you're working with a representative who is knowledgeable on the subject, you don't have to be afraid. But again, there are sharks in the water, and you want to put on either your chainmail suit or your shark cage before you get in that water in this situation. Now, Bogdan, I see that you have raised your hand. I'm not sure if you have a question. If you have a question, maybe you can post it in the Q&A and or the chat. And if that was just an accident, I'll assume that there's nothing to do there. But if you post something in the Q&A, you can even say, hey, can you unmute me so we can talk? But otherwise, I will leave that for now. There it is. Yes. What if I have not received the letters? Good for you. Lucky you. That means you don't necessarily have to be worried right now. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be aware of what's going on around PSB and these issues, because you want to understand what the issues are. You want to understand the steps that you can do to be proactive to mitigate the risk. Because as I said, maybe you weren't caught up, in this, shark attack on this individual occasion, but we know with this cycle that it's going to go away for a little bit and then it's going to come back. If you want to work as a long-term independent contractor, because there are so many benefits to it, you just want to do so by being informed and making sure that you're setting up your business for the most amount of success possible. And Eric says, and Bogdan says hi to you, Eric, as well. Must be a client. Okay, we got some more questions. This is a good time for questions. So if you have some questions, feel free to post them. So people are asking, what are the costs associated with representation? So for ourselves, we can go as far as the third and final stages of appeals. We just charge based on an hourly rate, depending upon the amount of time. In the situation of the letter that we did, I think it was about $500. So it wasn't a very big project. As things evolve, it could go longer. Again, if you are a client of ours, we do include with all of the services that we provide audit representation protection, which if you are a client and we prepared your taxes and you get this assessment, that protection against these letters would be included with our services. And we got another question here. What is the diff between this and traditional 20 questions, i.e., what has changed? So yeah, they were very similar to the original 20 questions. That the 20 questions is more a US thing than it is a Canadian thing. But they're all like, I mean, it follows that same principles. Also, if anyone's familiar, in the last special project, we used Blue Jay Legal, which was this AI tool that had its own list of questions. All the questions tend to be around the same issues, which are around the 5 criteria that have been set out for by the original court cases that have gone on, starting with the landmark precedent-setting case of Weeby Door back in the early 80s. So fundamentally, they're looking at risk for profit and loss, ownership of tools, control, independence, those types of factors that they've always been looking for, and the questions are directly related to those. They were asking questions specifically about things like insurance, which was interesting. I thought that was actually a big win because we've always believed that insurance, one, demonstrates independence because you're paying for the insurance independently. 2, also demonstrates risk for profit or loss because, Amanda, why do we buy insurance? To mitigate risk, right? So you wouldn't have insurance if there wasn't a risk. So that's, what I've always believed, and it's good to see that CRA is becoming wise to that as well. Is there a way to know if your business is already classified as a PSB? Our corporation is only 6 months old. So, I mean, is there a way to know whether you could be classified as PSB? Yes. We used to have a tool, like I said, that we used by Blue Jay Legal. You'd answer a bunch of questions. There's a couple people in the industry who have various tools for doing assessments. As far as whether CRA thinks you're a personal service business, the only way you're going to know is if you get a letter in the mail. But the reality is, again, much like a shark attack, this doesn't happen to a large percentage of the population. It becomes big news, and it's, everyone is talking about it when it happens, and it's life altering to those that it happens to, but there's not that many people that are assessed as PSB and then ultimately lose those cases. Unfortunately, by not that many and a small percentage of the population, we're still talking thousands of people, right? And you don't want to be one of those thousands of people. You want to mitigate that risk by following our steps to help you limit your liability wherever and whenever possible. So with that, I'm gonna continue on for a few more sections, talk about how to avoid PSB risk for your corporations. And I just got to get my mouse working again. So arguably the most important thing is a strong, clear, and correctly worded written contract. This is the most important thing because this is the only thing that's black and white. Now, if you're going through a staffing agency, you don't really have any concerns around this because you're going to have if you're going through a staffing agency, the agencies have vetted these contracts to make sure that there's no risk from a tax perspective for themselves as well as for you. Because from the agency's perspective, it's lose, lose, lose if you're deemed to be a personal service business. It's bad for you as the independent contractor, it's bad for the agency, and it's bad for the end client. So good professional staffing firms have contracts that have been vetted by lawyers as well as accountants. I can tell you we work with the NACCB. There's a sample contract that we have reviewed. It may not be the exact contract that people use, but they've been given the information on what are the things to look for. Now, ultimately, and sometimes people don't like this, is a really good independent contractor contract doesn't have a lot of things in it. It just basically has an early termination clause that if they're unhappy for whatever reason, they can terminate the contract. Because the one thing we don't want to see is a whole bunch of control factors where they're dictating that you do certain things within this contract. But as I said, if you're going through an agency, odds are it's been vetted by an accountant and a bookkeeper, or an accountant and a lawyer. If, however, you are going direct to your end client, I have, in more than one occasion, seen an end client try to cheap out on their HR costs and take an employee contract and change the wording to be an independent contractor contract with all the language associated with a employment contract. And that can be incredibly, incredibly dangerous. So if you're not going through a staffing agency, I encourage you to make sure that you're having not only a lawyer review your contract, which is important and helpful, but an accountant review your contract, because there's two things we're looking at here: employment law and tax law. And they are two very different things, managed and run by two different court systems. Do you suggest to start taking insurance? If you mean by getting insurance, absolutely, yes, I do. And that is why Amanda and Eric are here, and they're going to tell you why in just a few more minutes. So just bear with us, but absolutely, yes, I do. Okay. So secondly, your work relationship must support the contract. This sounds self-explanatory, but again, this is where they're trying to trip you up with the language of the questions that they ask. They might ask you, like, do you have to be at work certain times? Do you follow the policies and procedures of your end client? And you might say, yes, you do. And that might be deemed as an indicator that you are a personal service business, not an independent contractor. And again, it's how you use the language. If you simply said, well, I have my own policies and procedures, I choose to mirror the working hours of my end client so that I can be a more effective independent contractor, but those are my own policies and procedures, then it's perfectly safe to answer that. And in fact, we had situations like that in the letters that we responded to. And I had the situation with a client the other day who their end client had a 3-day-a-week, return to office policy. And he said, can I do this? Can I return to work? I'm like, absolutely. You can go in 3 days a week, as long as you make it clear that that is your policy, that you've chosen to create your own internal policy to work in the office 3 days a week, so that you can be an effective independent contractor. Because they can't tell you that you have to be in the office 3 days a week. But what they can do is, if you're not in the office 3 days a week and you're not an effective team member, they can just use their early termination clause to let you go. And that's why a good contract really is written with no expectations, but just a high level of expectation for you completing the work. So we've got, and one thing I should say is, to clarify, what the end client is allowed to control is the outcome, but not the process. So, and here's another great analogy, and I know we got a couple of questions coming in, but I want to lay out this analogy before we go in there, because it might ask or answer some of them. And the analogy that I use for independent contracting is the painter that you bring to your house. No one doubts that the painter that you hire to come in and paint your living room is not an independent contractor, and he's eligible to deduct or to deduct expenses and claim the small business deduction. And you would certainly provide control over, I want the room this color, I want you to, I'm going to be available on this days. But you're not going to dictate the process. You're not going to tell him whether he's taping the lines or he's cutting them in. He has full control over the process, but you have full control over the outcome. And it's the same with clients. There can be control factors in there, but it has to be control over the outcome, not over the process. Just to clarify on that. And we do have a bunch of questions flowing in, so I'm going to try and answer some of these now. Sorry to reiterate your point just now. If we carry our business with a staffing agencies, we do not have to worry about PSB risk. Unfortunately not. I wish it were that simple. I think your risk comes down, but it does not eliminate your risk. What you're going to have is a really good, strong, and well-written contract, which is a big part of it, absolutely. But it's still really easy for CRA to come along and ask you some questions and you put your foot in your mouth. So the most important thing you want to do in dealing with CRA is not put your foot in your mouth And you do that by putting a layer of protection between you and CRA, which should be either a lawyer, either a tax lawyer or an accountant to help you with that. So we got a couple more here. What if work effort is very short, e.g. just a few weeks for a company X? Does it make sense to have CA4IT or a lawyer review this and 30 or 40 of these per year? Is there a template contract with specific stipulations? So again, yep, there are template contracts out there. Again, there's one that the NACCB does provide as a templated contract that has been sort of vetted. You run some risk, obviously, but I would rather you have a templated contract that is a true independent contractor template, and then tweak that for each of your 30 or 40 clients that you have throughout the year, than not use one that's been checked. But I can see your point. You're not going to have every single contract used. You might have a contract template that you use where you just change out who the end client is and the date and the terms of the contract. Okay, good. Outcome, not process. What about agreement under laws of state and province and the statement that the consultant is an independent contractor? So, yeah, I mean, I think that goes to this point that we're on right now, that the work relationship conduct must support the contract. The contract is the one thing that's black and white, but I can guarantee you, I can show you court cases of people who had contracts that stated that they were independent contractors, but they were still deemed to be personal service businesses because the nature of the work did not support the nature of the contract. So you have to be careful that you have all of these things in place. And like I said, contract is definitely an important factor that the court's going to look at, but it's not the only factor that they're going to look at. And what the courts have said time and time again, and again, I'm saying all this from the reading of the courts. I'm not a lawyer, but what they've said time and time again is every case will be judged on its own individual merits. They're not going to give you a blanket answer of if you do X, Y, and Z, you are not a personal service business. The only exception to that is if you have more than 5 full-time employees. And we'll get to that in a second, but let's get on to a few more of these points if I can get my mouse to work here. So limiting the contract length, it is helpful to limit the contract length, but not a necessity. We like to see more contracts with shorter contract lengths because that demonstrates risk for profit or loss. Now, if you are going to be with an end client for 7, 8, 9 years, that's okay too, but I would certainly make sure that the contract is limited to 6 or 12 months and it doesn't auto renew, that you actually go through the process of renewing your contract every 6 to 12 months. We have many, many situations where people have been with the same client for over a decade and they still won their cases proving that they were truly independent contractors. And the judges have never used the length of a contract as a deciding factor. It's not one of the 5 key factors in determining status as either independent contractor or a personal service business. However, what we have seen is that CRA will use length of contract as a way of assessing and determining people that they might go and take a deeper look at. But the courts have never used that. But we do also find that by having the limited contract length, it again helps support the argument that there is risk for profit or loss, that the contract may not be renewed. And you'll even find a lot of the big banks will actually force you to take a gap 1 or 2 months if you hit the 2-year mark. And we tend to agree with that as not being a bad thing. We've got another question that's come in. If I have a current contract already vetted with a lawyer, should I have CPA 4IT review it as well? I guess, that's risk versus reward. Odds are the risk isn't going to change if we review it because you're under that contract now. I would maybe have us review it if you're going to go up for a renewal. And again, if you're going through a staffing agency, probably don't need us to review it. I can tell you if you're going through a major staffing agency, I can tell you with 90% certainty that it is good from a PSB perspective, because as I said earlier, it's just as bad for them as it is for you if you're deemed to be a PSB. Well, not just as bad, but it's not as good, or it's not good. Let's leave it there. Okay. What else do we have in here? Some strategies. Diversifying your client base. So, as that other gentleman was mentioning, having 30 to 40 independent contracts throughout the year is amazing. Again, this demonstrates risk for profit or loss. Although, and what I want to make clear here is every one of these factors are good things to do. Not one of them in and of itself will deem you to be a PSB, and not one of them in and of itself will deem you not to be a PSB. I want to think of it as like, anyone ever, like Eric, do you remember, did you ever do that thing in school where you had to drop the egg from the second floor and you were trying to, make sure the egg didn't crack? You want to layer it in as many layers of protection as you can so that when you drop it off the ceiling, it's not going to crack. And the more of these steps that you can take, the less the probability is of your proverbial egg cracking. But you don't necessarily have to have all of these pieces in place to be able to be deemed an independent contractor. Implement asset protection strategies. So this is, again, one of the things that Eric's going to talk to you more about, things like IPPs, because even if you're assessed to be a personal service business, anything that's in your IPP is still safe. That's still a deductible business expense, even if you were assessed as a personal service business. There's other things that we can do with holding companies and other asset protection strategies that we can do so that, God forbid, in a worst case scenario, that shark did bite you, we've got layers of protection. We've got that chainmail on so that he can't get through your arm. Control your work. Again, we talk about control. You should control the method and the manner of the work you achieve to get the desired results. They can control the outcome, but you really need to look at controlling the process yourself. And that sometimes means pushing back on things that they say. That sometimes means not going to staff parties. The more you can look different from the employee who's sitting at the desk right beside you, the better off you are, fundamentally. Build a professional website. Not enough people do this. And what's even worse is when we see someone on LinkedIn who says, I'm a project manager at TD, I'm a project manager at RBC, as opposed to I'm an independent contractor on contract at RBC. And that can be incredibly damaging, because if you don't think CRA is going to Google you and search all of your social media and your website when they go through one of these cases, you are mistaken. And we want to make sure that we are creating this persona and this image of you as a professional corporation and an independent contractor, because if you look and act like a business, you will be treated like a business. And with that comes the idea of making sure that you do a name that reflects that. Again, not necessarily required, but businesses do businesses with corporations, not with numbered companies. Numbered companies, in our opinion, are reserved for holding companies. Yes, you can absolutely incorporate a numbered company, and you can have operating names. But again, the idea here is the more you look and act like a business, the more you will be treated like a business from CRA's perspective. And then last but not least is, I guess we didn't even include it. I think we were going to say a website, which we also like. But on that note, I do want to give Amanda and Eric a chance to talk here. I was down at a conference, and I learned at this conference that listen is an anagram for silence, and that I need to do a little bit more listening and a little bit more being silent. So Amanda, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the importance of getting liability insurance? I know we've touched on it, but there's so many reasons why it's important. And I'm sure you can tell us all the benefits outside of just mitigating PSB risk.
Yeah, so the first slide speaks to how insurance helps differentiate in an independent contractor as being independent. So by having an insurance policy in place, you're demonstrating your independence. That policy is covering your own personal actions. You're reducing your financial risk by having that policy in play. If there's ever a suit against you, you have the backing of the policy. The policy itself is a contract, so you have further contractual evidence of taking the steps required to set yourself out as being an independent contractor. It's demonstrating being a separate business. You're not under the umbrella of whether it's the staffing agency or the end client and assuming their insurance. You're standing on your own 2 feet. And by having the policy in place as evidence, it's reducing, or has the possibility to reduce, the misclassification penalties, which is something I'm sure nobody wants to pay unduly. And this part, this is my favorite, because in addition to the insurance helping set you out as an independent contractor, there really is the importance of having the policy. And we're seeing a trend of independent contractors assuming that they have the proper coverage either through the staffing agency or through the end client. And that's not the case. Sometimes there may be staffing agency coverage, but you don't have the policy in your hands. You're not seeing what's covered, what's excluded, if there's any kind of loopholes in it. You can't even see if the policy premium's paid and up to date. You're really putting your faith in someone else. So for that aspect alone, I really urge you, get your own policy. You'll be able to discuss with your broker what's covered, what's not covered. And really the statistic here that I want to drive home is $30,000. $30,000 is the average cost for defending an unfounded claim. That's $30,000 out of your pocket if you haven't even done anything negligent and the claim's brought against you. So most independent contractors don't have that sitting around in their bank account. And that's one of the big key factors of your policy. It covers the cost to defend you. In addition to trying to rely on other insurance, you don't know if you have the full-scale coverage. So with ProLink, we do a package and we combine your professional liability and your commercial general liability coverage together to give you that full circle coverage, to make sure there's no gaps. What we are seeing, and this is recent of, I want to say as little as 2 months ago, there are independent contractors jumping online, trying to do the right thing, buying coverage, and they haven't looked into the product. And what's happening is they're buying a premise liability policy. And what a premise liability policy, it's really restricted to a business owner or occupier of leased space to make sure that no one gets injured on the premise. So for you as an independent contractor offering professional services, this policy is not going to respond to anything. It's really not worth the paper it's written on. So again, if there's a policy you've purchased and you're not with ProLink, but you want someone to have another look at it, I'd be happy to offer our services that way. At the end of the day, just making sure you have the coverage you need that's protecting you.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with all of this, Amanda, especially the point of having your own versus trying to rely on the coverage of the agency or the end client. Because I can tell you again, in this special project, that was a specific question that was asked. Do you have insurance and who pays for it? So the government is looking at that as a factor.
And a lot of time also, Andrew, to add on is the insurance that the agency have to cover the work that you are doing, it's to protect them. It's not really to protect you. So if, sorry for my French, but shit hit the fan, and there's a problem, they are protected, but you are at risk. So I was amazed when I started working with ProLink, how affordable their coverage is for our independent contractors. And now we are a big promoter of the program, both at the NACCB and EPCC level, because it's very, very affordable. And you can sleep well at night having this certificate to protect your company during an audit or during a real event that may happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, our RCP program, we have 2 programs. Oh, sorry, Andrew.
No, go ahead. Tell us more.
Have to do our plug-in. our ICP program is a very unique program because it covers those independent contractors that are contracting with staffing agencies. So for as little as $20 a month, like really affordable, you can get the coverage you need for the one contract you have with the staffing agency. Alternately, if you are contracting direct, or if you're going to be having multiple contracts on the go, we have a sister program, and it offers annual coverage, both professional liability and the commercial general. And still, it's probably sitting at half of what the regular market's charging for this type of coverage.
Yeah, you guys have an amazing program there. Now, if I'm not mistaken, that sister program, people have to be a member of the APCC to be able to get that sister program. Is that correct? And for those of you who aren't
Correct, yeah.
familiar, the APCC is the Association of Professional Computer Consulting companies.
I will talk a little bit about it,
Yeah.
Andrew. Also, you know, the importance of being part of an association, and the APCC is there and quite involved with the independent contractor. So I will talk about it a little bit later.
Excellent. And before we turn it over to you, we do have the questions are piling up. We got about 10 here.
Oh
So
my
I
God.
might, yeah, I might hit a couple of these and then I'll turn it over to you, Eric. Al is just wondering if the recording will be accessible later. Yes, it's streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn right now. It will be available as a replay on all of those channels afterwards. So that's if anyone needs to go back and recheck anything. It is being recorded live. We've got another gentleman asking if it's bad if his service contract says work schedule X hours a week. Does something like that add fuel to following client schedule? Yes, that's I would not like to see that in a contract. I don't like to see work hours in a contract. Like I said, contract should be short and sweet with an early termination clause. You know, that level of direction and detail makes me worried about what else is in that contract. I mean, could I defend your way around that? Yes, probably. But that leads me to believe that there's probably other things in that contract that aren't great, where they're exerting control over you that could be negative when it comes to determining whether you're an independent contractor. Will it make any difference if my contract is near 100% remote and my staffing agency and end client are both from the US? Nope. Unfortunately not. So the CRA is looking at other factors. They don't ultimately even care where your end client is. They're looking at this as you owe them money, and they think that you owe them more money than what you've paid them because they think you're an employee, effectively an incorporated employee, rather than an independent contractor. Because if you guys are all independent contractors, you know the tax benefits that you're receiving. You're only paying 12.2% on income you leave inside your corporation compared to the highest personal tax rate here in Ontario, 54%. You're also getting the ability to deduct expenses. There are significant tax advantages of being an independent contractor, and CRA wants to strip those away from you. But don't worry, you got at least 3 of us here, and I can tell you there's a much bigger army behind us here to help fight for your rights and help you to continue to maintain this. Now, what you need to know and be aware of is that if you value this, you need to protect yourself, and you need to also stand up when it comes to lobbying with the government and telling your elected officials that this is important, because it doesn't work this way in the States. It still works this way in Canada, in Australia, and the UK, but it doesn't work this way in the States. There are 1099s, but there's no tax advantages to being an independent contractor down in the States. And a 1099 is an independent contractor that they have down there, by the way. And what else do we have? Would you also recommend errors and emissions insurance? I guess, Amanda, that's ultimately a question by you. I would assume that's a yes.
Yeah. So professional liability insurance and errors and emission insurance is one and the same. They mean the exact same thing.
Yeah. And then ProLink costs for professional and commercial insurance. You kind of covered that. It can be as low as a couple of cups of coffee a month, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Most people are probably literally spending more on Starbucks than they would spend on your insurance program.
Yeah.
I have ProLink independent contractor policy, but recently I found that that does not cover professional liability. Can you please elaborate if that is the case? Doesn't seem right to me.
No.
Um, that doesn't, I can take that one offline.
Yeah.
If you want to provide my
So
contact details, and I
if
can
you want
speak
to
to
go to
that because I
the,
don't feel that all the,
yeah, maybe Hassan, if you want to maybe drop in your email address um into I'm trying to figure out what's the best way for us to get your contact information. Amanda, do you feel comfortable sharing your contact information and you can reach out and connect with you?
yeah, absolutely. Because anyone after the presentation can absolutely reach out if they have any questions. So I can throw that in the chat if you think that's the best
Yeah, I
way.
think that would be great. The question that was
Okay.
asked about insurance and who pays for it by CRA, was it about liability insurance or health, life, and death? So they were talking specifically about liability insurance in that question. They were asking similar questions about other things like other expenditures, just other costs as well. But yeah, they were asking specifically about liability. The professional liability is another name for E&O. Got it. Okay, so your answer was helpful there. That was my understanding too, but I just didn't want to be wrong. What if we run payroll for ourselves from our corporation? Um, so I mean, most independent contractors do run payroll for themselves from their own corporation. But what we're talking about is what's left over inside the corporation after you've done payroll. So payroll would still be a legitimate expense if you were deemed to be a personal service business. But anything left over in your corporation would not be eligible for that tax rate of 12.2%. It's going to be taxed at a higher rate. Plus a whole bunch of the other expenses that you're claiming right now, like home office, meals and entertainment, all that stuff pretty much gone. Right. There are things that you as a PSB are allowed to claim. Your wages and payroll are legitimate. IPPs are legitimate. There are certain things that even if you're deemed to be a PSB are still fine because from their perspective, that's flowing through. You're paying taxes on that like an employee anyways. What is your experience with the minimum website contact required and any recommendations on hosts? So I think you just need like an about information, like a couple pages and about contact us, very rudimentary. And again, this is an additional layer of protection. There's some amazing website hosts out there that are really cheap. You can put up a WordPress website on like Bluehost for like $10 a month, $20 a month. Again, a couple cups of coffee, and you've got an extra layer of protection. Doesn't tax depend on income levels, e.g., if under 30K, how much is a sole proprietorship? So when we're talking about personal service business risk, we're talking specifically about corporations. When you talk about a sole proprietor, you're just talking employee versus contractor. You can still be assessed to be an employee and lose your ability to deduct expenses. As a sole proprietor, your tax is marginal. When you're incorporated, the first $500,000 of net income is taxed at only 12.2% here in Ontario. If you go above 500,000, then it does go to the general rate, which is technically 38%, but then there's an abatement that brings it down to 28%. But no, if you're a corporation, very different structure. If you're a sole proprietor and you have money left over at the end of the day to save, you would likely benefit largely from a corporation. And if you're not sure, book a free consultation with one of my team members. We'll show you. We have a calculator on our website for sole prop versus Inc., and it will show you the potential tax savings of incorporating. The only reason the sole proprietorship makes sense is if you have no money left over at the end of the day. If you spend every penny you earn, then a corporation isn't going to be beneficial for you because a corporation requires you to leave money inside the corporation to get the largest benefits out of it. Hassan says, thank you. That was the guy who had the question about his ProLink status. And what are the advantages and disadvantages of liability insurance for businesses? I think you've sort of covered that. Do you want to add anything,
I
Amanda?
haven't found a disadvantage yet.
Yeah.
So I haven't found a disadvantage yet.
Yeah, no, I guess you afford a few less coffees, but really everyone should cut out a few Starbucks anyways.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's
when
full
is the
coverage and it's a full write-off too.
yeah, 100% deductible. Now disability and life is slightly different, but 100% deductible, no issues. Health and dental, 100% deductible, no issues. We got another gentleman asking, when is the best time to get insurance as a new independent contractor?
The day
Right
you
away?
If
start,
you're with a staffing agency, yeah,
Yeah.
before you have a lawsuit, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're with a staffing agency, you can do it as your contracts begin. If you're contracting directly, most contracts are requiring proof of insurance in the RFP tender stage.
Yeah. Would the response to the question that NACCB's insurance for ICs does not cover professional liability be of interest to all attendants? Yeah, but I am certain that so it's not the NACCB's insurance first and foremost. That needs to be clarified. So the independent contract, like no, none of the NACCB's insurance nor the and agency's insurance would cover an independent contractor. It would cover the agency or the NACCB. If the client had a ProLink policy of their own that they purchased, I think that there must be some mix up, and I'm sure Amanda will get to the bottom of it. But I can't imagine that it's not covering them. It doesn't make sense. And I've certainly never come across that ever before in my life. And I think that there's probably just a miscommunication going on here. If I work for different departments within the same company, but contracts will only mention the company, will that increase my risk of PSB? Marginally, but yeah. I mean, staying at the same company for a longer period of time, even if it's shifting contracts, again, no court has ever used that as a determining factor in a case. But I have definitively seen CRA use length of time as in their own mindset a way of determining, which it isn't, and it's never been supported by the courts. But it does increase your probability that CRA would have a look at you and be assessed. So if you're going to be at the same contract or the same company for multiple years, even in a different contract, you better dot your I's and cross your T's on the other areas of protecting your business.
and I like the different scope of work that you need to do. So even if you work for one company, but you have 3 different mandates inside that company, I would be I would be happy if you were able to ask to write the scope of those 3 mandates in the contract. And when you change contract and it terminates, when you have a new contract, the scope again,
Now, the the questions keep coming faster than I can answer them.
Wow.
So I'm taking a minute to let Eric talk about the other aspects of the session. Then we'll come back to a few more Q&As if that's all right. Does that,
Perfect.
Eric, you okay with that? Because
Yeah,
I think
I'm okay
otherwise
with that.
we're going to be here till the webinar is over just answering questions.
No problem. And that's good that you have questions. I'll go very fast on the disability coverage. So basically, the disability is you have a money machine. Your capacity to earn a living is that you remain healthy. When you're an employee, you don't need disability coverage because the employer give that for you. But when you are a business owner, you need to take care of the business. And if for whatever reason you become disabled, you have an accident, a sports accident, or a critical illness, the capacity to earn that living is now gone. And disability coverage is crucial to maintain your tax status. In their CRA guideline, they talk about to help you pay fixed incomes and things like that. See that as if tomorrow I cannot work, I have no income. But would you be in a position to survive? Most of us wouldn't be able to survive 2, 3, 4, 5 years of no income. So disability coverage is crucial It's like insuring a money machine that you would have in the basement. I'm sure if you had a money machine printing money in the basement, you would probably insure it. You are the money machine. You are the brain behind the business. You need to make sure that you take care of it. The other thing, we're gonna be more and more involved at our level with the APCC. The APCC is the association for professional like you guys, and we will be a little bit more active with the association. You should become member of a professional association like this one. When there's cases like we've seen in the past 2 years, we need to be strong. We need to have a good presence in that association to fight the fight that we need to fight. Do some lobbying at the different level of governments. So go check it out, APCC. This association is there for you, for independent contractors, and I think it would be beneficial if we grow the membership as a team to make sure that we can help the ecosystem fighting the fight that are very bad for the ecosystem.
Yep. And plus, you get the added benefit of getting the access to the ProLink program, which is, pays for the cost of the membership just in being able to get the better rate on the insurance. And I can tell you, we've seen many clients, and there's no one with a better rate in the industry for E&O than ProLink. But it does require you to either be working with one of the agencies that's in their umbrella or the APCC to get the favorable rates.
Yeah.
So we've got we'll maybe turn it back to some more questions here because they continue to pile up. We've got 11 more to go. So coverage, I have the following point, or no, that was related to something else. I don't know what that is, but we have another question here is, I have the following point laid out in my contract. Would this protect me from PSB risk? Independent contractor relationship, the parties especially agree that neither party nor any of their employees, blah, 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 blah. Great that you have that in your contract. You have expressly written in your contract in black and white that you are an independent contractor. One, is there other things further down that imply you're not an independent contractor? Two, does your work support the nature of the contract? So this does not in and of itself guarantee that you are an independent contractor. It's crazy to believe that you could have a contract and a legal agreement to two people who agree to that, and the government would say, no, we don't agree with that. But it happens all the time. Unfortunately, one of the big issues the industry faced is with some of these class actions where we had some bad actors who were trying to play both sides of the fence. They had a contract just like this that said they were an independent contractor, but they still came after and tried to get their rights from an employment status perspective. And unfortunately, the government will look right through the contract. Doesn't seem like they should be able to, but they are, unfortunately. Are you saying if under 30K in corp makes sense? No, not necessarily. It depends on your situation. If you have a high income spouse who's an employee and you're able to live off that spouse's income and all the 30K you could save in your corporation, then yeah, that would make sense. But if 30K is all you're making and you spend everything of what you earn, an incorporation probably doesn't make sense. What I'm saying is a corporation makes sense largely. There's many other benefits, but its largest financial benefit comes from the ability to leave money inside the corporation and have that taxed at a lower rate than what you would pay if you were to take that into personal income. And as a sole prop, whatever's left over after the expenses is income. How far back can CRA go? Assume 7 years of what was left over after salary director's advance. Can they go after passive investments in a holding company? So holding companies are a way of us sheltering and protecting funds. So money, once it's moved out of the corporation, is very difficult for them to go after. So 7 years is a bit of a misnomer. So they can actually only go back 3 years. Beyond that, it's statute barred. Now, first of all, it's 3 years from your latest notice of assessment. And beyond that, it's what they call statute barred. Now they can go back up to 7, but in order to go back up to 7, they would have to prove fraud, which is very difficult for them to do. And the onus of responsibility actually shifts from, believe it or not, the onus of responsibility for proving your information correct is yours, not theirs. Once it goes to statute barred, it flips and it becomes their responsibility to prove that it was that it's wrong, rather than you have to prove that it's right. But until that statute of until it's statute barred, the onus and the responsibility is yours to prove that your numbers are right, not theirs to prove that you are wrong, which is important. So typically, most PSB audits will be for 2 or 3 years, but that still adds up. Are you working with Quebec? Amanda and Eric are. I unfortunately am not. We do have another firm that we could recommend if you are looking for an accountant in Quebec. Unfortunately, we do not serve Quebec. Unfortunately, Revenue Quebec is as complicated as dealing with another country, and we don't serve the US either. So
you can contact me. We are the one working in Quebec with our accounting branch of IT360. So,
is it advisable not to leave too much in the corp? No, it is advisable to leave as much money in the corp as you possibly can from a tax perspective. If you build up enough inside your corporation, you want to shelter it and protect it by leveraging things like corporations, holding corporations, or leveraging something like an IPP, which we didn't touch too much on, but go back and watch some of our past webinars with Eric where we talk about what an IPP is, because those are great for sheltering and protecting funds that you've been able to retain inside the corporation. Well, it's actually, I guess if it's an IPP, it's not inside the corporation, it's in a pension plan, but good way of sheltering funds. If you use the corporation to purchase an investment property and put in roads and services, does this? No. So I guess someone's wondering if they buy an investment property and put in roads and services, does this lend credence to be an independent? Absolutely not. Corporation, like the government does not care where you're working or how you're working when it comes to your independence. They're looking at these things that we talked about: independence, control, ownership of tools, risk for profit or loss. And I don't think any of building a road and services to a remote property is going to affect that in any way, shape, or form that I can live. But maybe there's a more larger elaboration that I'm not reading between the lines on. Do you recommend keeping a low amount in your business account? That I actually do, because your money should be invested with people like Eric, and you shouldn't be holding a lot of cash. That's just financial management 101. You should have enough cash to pay your taxes and your current liabilities, but beyond that, it should be invested. And you can hold investments inside your corporation. Now, once you reach a certain point, you would want to move those investments out to a separate holding company for a whole bunch of reasons. There's tax benefits as well as limited liability benefits of moving it out as well. Okay, so here's the email he got from Hassan. I don't know if you want to, do you want to go over this now, Amanda, or is this something? It says our ICP program has up until a few days been fully self-serve, with recent underwriting changes no longer allowing any professionals with PM designations. We added this disclaimer to the application of, oh, so I think he's being denied from the package. Did you guys maybe change something? I'll let you.
There's with the ICP program, there's a, it covers general categories. IT being our biggest, we do finance, not CPAs, unfortunately, because they require a different level of insurance with anyone else in the finance. Virtual assistance, management consulting, and some technical engineering. The caveats are there are some exclusions. Professional engineers that are stamping, designing, supervising our program's not giving them the level of professional liability that their professional association requests. So we slide them over to our solutions department at that time. So that's, I think where the email's coming from, that there was a declination on the ICP program for a certain designation. But again, I provided my email address, and I'm absolutely happy to have further discussions on that.
Yeah, and that sort of clarifies it. It's not that you don't have, it's that this individual just didn't qualify for the program. because unfortunately this program isn't for
Correct. Yeah.
everybody. And I, some people may not realize that in insurance, it's about building this umbrella policy. And in order to get these great rates, you have to have a very specific umbrella that meets certain criteria, and not everyone is going to be able to be in that umbrella.
But Amanda, let me ask you a question. You have other program that could protect PM, project manager. It's just that he didn't fit exactly in this category. But I mean, the project manager, we have a lot of clients that are project manager, and they can find E&O through you guys, just in a different category. Am I right?
Exactly. And so I'll circle back to, because I had said, the ICP can't do CPA. That being said, we have a separate CPA program. If the management consultant isn't driving with ICP, we have a separate management consultant program. And then we also have the solutions department, who offers the broader scale coverage when required. So I still encourage any independent contractor, reach out to us and we'll find you the solution that best meets what your coverage requirements are.
Yeah. Another question. This one's for you, Eric. If I'm getting paid irregularly in dividends versus salary, can I still get disability insurance? I would assume yes, but
yes, but if you contact me or one of my team member, I will convince you right away
to go to salary. Yes.
To go to salary for all kinds of reasons that are mathematically proven. So, but yes, you could still have disability coverage.
Yeah. And we got another question here. If we want liability insurance, do we have to have cash assets in our business? Because sometimes businesses go in losses, and now how are we supposed to pay for that then? I don't think you have. There's probably you guys aren't looking at an income statement or a balance sheet when you qualify people. I don't imagine. Are you, Amanda?
No, we're not even looking at revenue for ICP program.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, fundamentally, if you fit within this bucket and you can pay for the insurance, you're good to go.
Correct. It's scope of services provided.
Yeah. So I have a contract with a US-based company, and it is my only client. Is this a bad thing? They also want to pay me a bonus, which I have not agreed to. Do you provide services to review contract? Yes, we can review the contract. US-based client, nothing wrong with that. We have many clients with US-based client. We have many clients with only one end client. We can certainly mitigate and protect against that. I'm not a huge fan of the bonus thing, but although I don't let the tax tail wag the dog, I'm not going to tell you not to take money. So we just might want to make, like I said, button up all the loose pockets that we might have elsewhere. If there's things in your contract that might expose you, like bonuses, because again, we don't like the tax tail wag the dog. I don't want to turn down money, but yeah, it might be something worth having a look at. If there's money left in an opco, say $100,000, should it be moved to a holdco to protect it? Potentially, yes. You have to look at the cost benefit though. Setting up a holding company has additional costs associated with it. Now you're filing two corporations. You got a setup costs, you got a maintenance cost of those corporations. And so you usually want to be making sure that you're saving more in taxes than what the ongoing taxes or what the ongoing costs are. Now, there are other non-financial factors like the limited liability and the risk from the potential CRA coming after you and coming after your assets, or other creditors coming after your assets. But if you're looking strictly at the financial, what you want to look at is, okay, if I have money that was invested in generating a return, so let's say I got 100K, and let's say that generates $10,000 of investment income each year. Investment income is considered passive income, and you're going to pay tax. Now, it gets more complicated than this because it's dependent on whether it's capital gains, whether that's interest income, whether it's dividend income. But generally speaking, investment income pays tax at a higher rate, around 30% versus the 12.2%. So if you have $10,000 in investment income that you could move to a holding company and then take your own salary and reduce that income down to zero in that holding company, you would have paid $2,800 on that inside if you had left it inside your operating company. Now what will happen is you'll only pay 12.2, so you're saving about $1,600 on that $10,000 each and every year. Your cost for the additional thing might be in and around there. So you probably want to have some investment income in the neighborhood of about at least $10,000 a year. So it's not so much about how much assets are in there, unless you're looking at asset protection. Now, there are other tools as well, other than holding companies, like IPPs and other things that you can do as well. Number one thing I'd recommend is go look at our top 10 advanced tax strategies for independent contractors, and give you some of the other tips. Any specific clause to put in a contract with a staffing agency to mitigate PSB risk? Like I said, just an early termination clause. That's the most important thing. Everything else should be stripped out as much as, like, a really good contract is a one-page contract, believe it or not a long contract. So it's less about what you put in and more about what you take out. Our latest PSB audit took only 10 days and this is from one of my colleagues, and was due to our back and forth communications and a holiday in between. We were pretty quick to move on anyone that requires PS. So that's just my colleague bragging about how quick we resolved that case. Which thank you, Karen. More comment. Leaving as much money as possible in your corporation is only a great strategy if the money is being used to build active business, not investments. I'm going to completely disagree with you there. The big reason that you're getting a benefit is because if you're able to invest, let's say that you have two choices here. I can be taxed at 44 or 54%. Let's just call it 50 for even math, or I can be taxed at 12%. So I can either have $88 to invest, or I can have $46 to invest. And that $88 is going to grow and compound substantially faster than the $44. And even if all your goal is that you want to put it in your corporation and take it out in retirement, it's still going to grow substantially faster in your corporation, because the way compound interest works and compound growth works, compounding $88 is so much better than compounding 44. So I'm going to disagree with you there. And again, investing
And
in your corporation.
Andrew, we have tools also, that we like to use with clients, where basically they all have different scenarios.
Yeah.
So I like to modelize with the system. Okay, this is what you're telling me you're doing today. Let's bring your scenario to retirement with the same rate of return and everything the same, and let's put beside it the scenario that we recommend, and let's look at the end results.
Yeah.
We can prove salary dividend. We can prove, is it good to pull money out and put that in a TFSA? We can prove all these things. There's always a better scenario, and the goal is to modelize one scenario against the other to make sure that we take the right decision.
Yeah. So I know we're a bit past time. I'll try and get through these last ones. I'll ask no more questions be posted, because we're trying to get through these and we are past time. But I'll do my best. We've only got 6 more here. Would having products out of the corporation, such as an e-commerce site, SaaS, etc., even if they don't make up 10 to 20% of the revenue, still work in your favor as not being classified as PSB? Yes. The more independence, the more risk for profit or loss, all better. But you'd want it in your corporation, not out of your corporation. So I hope that answers that. Hassan just says, thank you, Amanda, for all your help in answering his questions. Steve, can I use insurance as a savings vehicle? Absolutely. There are some amazing insurance products, and they also provide some amazing tax incentives.
Yes.
Again, go back and watch some of our top 10 tax strategies for independent contractors. Can I use a PPP as a savings investment vehicle? Again, yes. So PPP, personal pension plan, sometimes referred to as an IPP, individual pension plan, synonymous. Yes, absolutely. We love them. They do amazing things. And cheaper now than ever before, right, Eric?
Definitely. We've negotiated as a big happy family, with one of the largest pension plan group in Canada, discounted rate for all independent contractors in the program. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. And also the amount of legislation goes down dramatically. So we got a question here. Last year, I filled out the form for a free consultation on the CPA for IT website. In fact, I did it a couple times, but I was never contacted to take the next steps. I'm located in New Brunswick. Is that the reason? No, we would have met with you, or at least told you that. So I don't know what happened there. Usually when you fill in our free consultation form, there's a second step. So once you fill in the form, it takes you to an actual calendar booking tool on the second page. So that might have been the thing. But if you drop, well, if you send an email to customer service at cpa4it.ca, we will make sure you get that initial consultation. Dear Amanda, Andrew, and Eric, this workshop session has been enlightening and engaging. Many thanks. You are most welcome. 10 CRA request. I think that's access to your business and personal banking information. Yes, I mean they wouldn't request access, but you're going to have to provide them all the information that is available. They can request any financial information, and you are required to provide it. So like they're not going to ask for your login credentials. No, they will not ask that, but they will likely ask for your bank statements, and you will need to provide them. And that is the last question. Done. Woo! That was a great session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
And Eric.
Thank you, guys. Have a great week.
You too.
Bye, guys.
Bye for now, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. And Amanda, your internet worked perfectly.